Okay, so we're going to have a little look now at the practical side of some handling techniques and exercises that you can use to try and encourage your child to crawl. As I said earlier, there's a lot of tummy time exercises in the rolling session that I did, so I won't focus too much on repeating those exercises, but just being aware that all the tummy time exercises are really useful for developing shoulder girdle stability. This is just a little bit of a stage further on. So we talked about how transitioning between movements at this stage is really key to developing the skills of crawling. So if we're going to put, I don't have a motivating toy here, but I do have candle might do. So that's the position. You want a diagonal placement of a motivating toy for your child. And what you're trying to do is encourage them to put one hand down and reaching over with the other hand for a toy. You might find that they'll just reach out and get very good at just reaching out with one hand. So it may be that you need to just place that hand down for them and make this really exciting, noisy, colourful, whatever toy, motivating toy, so that they decide, oh, I do want that, but I can't bring this arm in because it's being fixed. So I'll bring this arm in. So that diagonal reaching, propping through the arm, really nice activity, strengthening up. Obviously to both sides, so the diagonal placement of the toy is really important. So you might want to just put hand over hand, get that hand down, so you're getting a reach across. Okay, like I said before, you might find that your child flops down. That is absolutely fine and all part of learning. So either they'll bing their legs out and end up on their tummy, or in that position, they might push back up through the hand, which would be fantastic. So another way of facilitating the lying to the sitting position is through side lying. So as I've said before, most children will learn to get up into sitting from their tummy. So they'll push up on extended arms, tuck their bottom in, keep one hand down on the ground and roll over into the sitting position. And that's how most children will learn to get up from their tummy into sitting. But a nice activity to do is to encourage them to come through side lying. This isn't how they will do it naturally, but it's a really nice way of getting them to push through their arms. So in this side lying position, you want to put one hand over their pelvis, your opposite hand just under their armpit. And what you're going to do is just encourage them to come up. So I'm levering one arm against the other. Ideally, just do a little movement just to initiate it, because you want your child to then take over the movement. So it's just a little initiation of movement. And what you want to see is this arm coming down on the floor and pushing, pushing, pushing up to get to that sitting position. Because your child won't get themselves into this position to start with themselves. But if they're in that position, it's either a matter of flopping down or pushing up into sitting. Normally, your child, if there's something really motivating here, will push up into sitting. So you can pause in that position, wait as long as you like, as long as your child's happy, and wait for them to push up through that arm. So again, it's all about weight bearing through arms to develop shoulder girdle stability. So that's a nice thing to practice, that side lying up into sitting. So if we just look at the tummy lying up into sitting, so what you can do is sometimes your child might need a little bit of help from the pelvis just to come up into that 4-point position. So what you do is pop your hands around the big bony block of pelvis and you're just curling it backwards. Okay, I'm not pulling up, I'm bringing it backwards. So with my hips, I'm in this position, but as I come down, my hip is coming backwards. So you're pulling, pulling, and then you'll be in that position and hopefully arms will come down and then you can just stabilize in that position and just hold there for a little bit. And then to bring them up into sitting, you're just going to bring them into a side sit position. And again, you're waiting for this hand to come and push up. Okay, so those are the transitions going from sitting to lying. So it's reaching for that toy, propping through arms. Then the side lying, transitioning from side lying, up, pushing through those arms again. And then the tummy lying, we're just bringing the hips up, allowing those arms to come, and then bringing into sitting. Again, the arm is coming down. So those transitions are really useful if your child's struggling with shoulder instability issues. So again, we talked about pivoting on their back. That is usually the first time you'll see your child move around, pivoting on their back, but also pivoting on their tummy should be really encouraged. So in that forearm position, this comes a little bit before the commando crawling, but again, if we've got something really motivating over here, child's lifting head, reaching forwards, transferring weight, and you'll see that little shift round. So getting them reaching in that forearm prop position or up on extended arms reaching, and just moving from one side to the other, transferring weight from side to side is again a nice activity to help develop the muscles needed for crawling. So pivoting on the tummy. You can also help with commando crawling. Commando crawling is very much, like I said, it's very much upper body and trunk led. The legs aren't really doing very much, but what you can do just to encourage that forward movement is just bend one leg up, then you can block that little foot with your knee and your child should push forwards through that block. So although their upper body is working, if they're struggling a little bit, you can give them a help with their lower body. So you're basically flexing their hip up, but it's also what we call externally rotating. So the hip is rotating out. It's not coming up underneath them. It's coming up and out to the side is the position they use. So it's sort of a reverse froggy position. Then you can block the foot with your knee or your hand, and your child should push forwards against that blockage. So you can just do that both sides reciprocally, one side then the other side, and see forward progression. And that just teaches your child how to move and gives them the experience of moving, which is good to do. So that's how to facilitate. So when I say facilitate, that is just you guiding your child through a movement. And facilitation is really, really helpful. Repetition. So these pathways are laid down and your child can join in the movement and then take over the movement and learn that movement themselves. And then those pathways are laid down and it's a natural movement that will occur. So what should we look at next? Just literally supporting your child in a 4-point kneel position. Really lovely, really helpful. Nice way to do that is over your leg. So if your child, if they're high tone and tend to kick out with their legs, this is a nice one because you can get them into that kneeling position. So the hip is directly above the knee. And then your other leg can just come in and just secure that position so they can't push their feet out. And that's usually about the right height. Obviously depends how thick your legs are or how long your baby's arms are. But just being in that position can be really nice. Obviously having that real motivating toy, whatever it may be, in front of you and just supporting them in that position. So weight's going through shoulders. They're in the 4-point position, but you're obviously providing a lot of support. That's absolutely fine. Just try and rock their weight over the top of that aligned arm. Again, when I talk about alignment, what you want to see is the shoulder directly over the elbow, directly over the hand. Okay, so to start with, it might be further out or further in front, but once they've achieved that lovely alignment and they can take weight in an aligned position, that's a great stabilizing activity. So that's a nice one to do for supporting in 4-point kneeling. Now, if that's quite difficult for your child to do, to have their weight fully forwards, you can make it a little bit easier by just raising them up against gravity and maybe trying high kneel propping. So if you've got, this is quite big enough. I've got the wedge here. So a surface that they can just rest their arms on in a high kneel position. So again, what you want to see is that weight going through their hands, elbows, shoulders, but it's not quite so challenging for them because they're using other muscles here to keep them stable. But a high kneel propping, which is what we call this, you can support wherever it's needed. So I'll just pop out from there. So it may be that you're behind your child and you're just needing to support them around the pelvis in this position to keep that bottom tucked in, and they can just take a little bit of weight through their hands. Again, that's really lovely shoulder girdle, arm development. So yeah, that's the high kneel prop position. Okay, so just going back to the 4-point kneel position, so the quadruped crawl position it's sometimes called, your child might be able to cope with you just holding their pelvis for them. So all the weight isn't going through their shoulders. You can just give them a little bit of support here around their hips just to take off the weight that's going through those shoulders, and just playing, supporting them around their hips in that position. Another thing you can do is just to support them in that position is maybe with a rolled up towel, which I don't have on me at the moment, but I can use my feet cushion. You imagine this is a rolled up towel, so it just goes under their tummy. Okay, that's the towel under their tummy, and you are just holding 2 ends of the towel. Can't really see because it's too fat, but if arms were on the floor here, so it's just providing a support underneath their tummy, like a hammock under the tummy, so they'll experience the weight through their knees, through their arms, but you're just taking that little bit of support, like a hammock swing under their tummy. It doesn't work very well showing you like that, but just taking the support under their tummy there. So you've got a rolled up towel blanket either side, just supporting. So you haven't got to be in this position because children are quite heavy and you're going to hurt your back being in that position. But if you can sit back with a straight back, holding the towel and just letting them feel the ground, almost like that rocking we talked about when a child will get in that position themselves, just rocking backwards and forwards. So just having a towel underneath there and let them just dangle in that position and feel what it's like, get that feedback from their knees and through their elbows in that position. It's really nice. And the family I do work with had a genius discovery. They found on the internet, I haven't found anything similar. There may be similar things out there for children, but I haven't found them. They found a harness for disabled dogs. So dogs that have had spinal injuries, so their back legs sort of drag behind them. It is actually on Amazon. It's literally just sort of a canvas that goes under the tummy with handles, so you can hold the handles, and in essence it would support a child in 4-point kneeling, and they just found that really helpful just from an ergonomic point of view to help their backs, just holding their child in that 4-point position. But as I said, this was designed for animals, but there's no reason at all why something like that couldn't be used. But to be fair, a rolled up towel would be very similar. So it's just taking the weight of your child's core really, so they get the feeling of weight going through their hands and their knees. Okay, so we talked about the transitions of movement and really pushing through arms. We've talked about other positions where you can push through arms, so high kneeling is a nice one. You can even do standing if your child enjoys standing. If you've got a surface, sort of the height, chest height, or almost down to waist height that they can put their hands on with straight arms, so there's a little bit of weight going through those shoulders, that would work as well. All the time thinking about that alignment, thinking about the weight going directly from wrist, elbow, shoulder, so you're getting that lovely weight bearing through an aligned limb. That's all about shoulders. So I think that covers most. Oh, there was one other thing actually. For the children who are quite low tone or very flexible, who, when they get into a 4-point position, tend to sort of frog their legs out, splay their legs out, so haven't got that stability, can't keep stable hip position, I have used a happy strap. I don't know whether anyone's come across the happy strap. It was designed by parents of a child who had Down syndrome, so the low tone, and basically it's a very simple strap system that goes around the waist and has a strap that comes down either side, and then around each thigh. But it does have a strap attaching between the legs. So basically it prevents that abduction, external rotation of the hips. So it just keeps the hips aligned. So it can be used in standing, in any kneeling position, but it can be really helpful because it just means it's another pair of hands keeping the child's hips aligned, so you don't have to worry too much about keeping both legs in if they're splaying out, because the strap will do that for you. And obviously, to start with, the child will be provided with stability, but they do need to develop that stability themselves. But it's really helpful in the early stages just to give them that little extra stability, and they can work on other areas, and then you can wean them out of the strap because they're developing that stability themselves. So that's the happy strap, if anybody wants to look at that. I found that quite useful. So equipment wise, rolls, you can do 4-point kneeling over rolls. I don't know if any of you have access to rolls. The myofascial foam rollers can be quite nice. They're a good height for children, just to practice being in that 4-point position. And they can practice rolling forward, walking arms forward, walking arms back. That's all really nice pre-crawling work. So yeah, I haven't got my foam roller with me, but it's about that height. And they can roll backwards and forwards over that. Reaching and 4-point kneeling, that's another one actually. So we talked about how reaching children accommodate that position by making a bigger base with their legs. So obviously key is learning to reach in 4-point kneeling. So if you're taking weight through arms, putting really interesting things in front of children so they have to reach up. And that reach is really important. Starts that dissociation of the limbs from the trunk to allow that crawling to happen. So reaching forwards to the side is great for strengthening that core, shoulders, and getting a separation of the limbs from the trunk. Getting the legs involved is another one. So I think that's exhausted all my handy tips on techniques to help your child crawl. Anyone got any specific questions that they need things adapting for their child?